Keep moving, Rebecca. We've got our last session today.
Yep, I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, take it away.
Okay. So I'm going to be talking about tips and tricks relating to using EDDMapS. Some of this was touched on in other presentations, but we, as with any long summit, will have fluctuations in attendees. So some of this you're just going to see again, and some maybe you missed Chuck's top presentation, or one of the other presentations. So hopefully this will catch the people who missed those. So the idea behind this kind of presentation I wanted to have was setting yourself up for success. And most of what we ended up talking about with people is that they find that the more time they can spend in the field, doing their job, or however they want to phrase it, and the less time they can spend in the office trying to do stuff, on a computer or whatever, the more successful they feel, the more they feel like they're affecting some sort of change. So the ideas I came up with for this talk kind of are four big points, and I'll go into three of those kind of more in depth. Pick the right reporting tool. So what do you need? What does your staff need? What do volunteers need? Chuck went over some of these tools we have. Kevin went over some of the tools, and so on and so forth. So I'll kind of distill it all down to one slide. Know where things are. So I'll talk about the alerts. I'll talk about some of the maps again. And I'm not going to get into the EDDMapS verification, but our EDDMapS verifiers, which we've talked about here and there in some of these different talks, the EDDMapS verifiers see reports before anybody else will, because they are the ones who review those records that then could become publicly available. So they're the ones that are helping to get this data through from the reporter to the public. So we've gone over EDDMapS verification in our previous summits. We have a lot of training materials on the training page regarding reviewing records. So there's a lot of information out there about it, but I just did want to point out that they're the first ones, other than the reporters, who will be notified when something gets reported. The next concept is identification. So there's a lot of identification tools. Chuck mentioned the species info pages on EDDMapS. There's field guides in a couple of the apps that we have, and he also mentioned earlier about trying to incorporate identification assistance into some of the apps to help people to be able to identify those. But another aspect of identification is that EDDMapS verifier network. The verifiers are assisting in the correct identification of these reports. So in some cases, the reporter gets it correct and it goes through. And in some cases, the reporter maybe misses an identification characteristic and that gets corrected. Or in some cases, the report is marked as negative. So the report remains, but they looked for, say, garlic mustard, but it was, say, like a native violet. So it was marked as negative. They looked for garlic mustard and did not find it. That's another possibility. So these EDDMapS verifiers do help in the identification of these records as they come in. And then finally, keeping data together. So we've talked about the advanced query tools briefly. I'm going to talk about it again from another aspect. But the idea of keeping data together when it's difficult otherwise, that's where the concept of the EDDMapS projects come in. So if you have a particular grant, if you have an awareness campaign, something like that, where there's not a way to easily query it using our available tools, the EDDMapS projects concept is where that can come into play. And we announced EDDMapS projects at the last summit. We added some additional features, and after you announce something and people start using it, we fixed some bugs that came along. But I'm going to talk about projects again in a little bit, as again a way of uniting data that would be difficult using the other available tools, such as the advanced query tool. So which app should you use? This was a question that came up earlier in the Q&A box. So think about who your audience is. For EDDMapS Pro, we're talking about land managers and professionals, people who know how to ID things, who need a lot of additional features to be able to do their job. That's where EDDMapS Pro comes in. The EDDMapS app is trained volunteers, citizen scientists. These are people who, I'm just going to walk around my neighborhood and, oh, I found another mimosa. I found another, Japanese knotweed, things like that. These are people, they might be your master gardeners, master naturalists, part of your friends of group, river keepers, people who are already kind of invested in some aspect of, being trained to do things in a natural setting. And then you have Wild Spotter, which is going to be very site-based, very location-based. You're recruiting from people who are potentially only going to visit maybe once, or maybe just infrequently on an individual basis, but maybe you have a lot of people coming in as a whole. So you're going to try to pick species that these recreationalists and casual observers are going to be able to ID, as well as your EDRR type species. For EDDMapS Pro, the reportable species, they can be any invasive or pest or biocontrol species we have in our database. You create your own list of things you want to report. The EDDMapS app, it's similar in that you can, when you download the EDDMapS app, you pick your state, province, whatever, and you'll get a species list from that selection, but you can add your own species in the My Species section, which means you can report anything you feel you need to report. And then there's also another option if you have mobile signal called Search, where you can search for live any species in our database. With Wild Spotter, it's based on the site's prioritized list. So again, if you're a national park and you have 10 species you want people to report when they're out recreating, those 10 species are the species they can report. The EDDMapS app and the EDDMapS Pro app do have negative reporting, which is I looked for something and did not find it. Those are really important for EDRR species. So, spotted lanternfly, brown marmorated stink bug, emerald ash borer, different things like that, where you're wanting to keep track of it and monitor places regularly for it. That's really important. So those are in the EDDMapS Pro and the EDDMapS app. Wild Spotter does not currently have negative reporting. It's just focused on people hiking, camping, canoeing, whatever. Yes, I found this thing. The EDDMapS Pro and EDDMapS apps are county and coordinate based. So you can say, I saw this thing at this location. They both have the option for private or hide my exact location, so that you can obscure the coordinates to the county level if it's a particularly sensitive area or something else is going on. Wild Spotter has that as well, but because you are selecting the location you're in, that park, that forest, whatever, that's an additional component that provides a location basis. Revisits you can do in the EDDMapS Pro app. There is a revisit form. In the EDDMapS app, there is no form in the app, but I have heard of people, when they have signal, using the map feature in the field guide to navigate outside the app to our website. And they're essentially going through the website to get to a revisit option. I really do recommend, if you're gonna be revisiting records, just use EDDMapS Pro. It's much, much easier than, you know, doing a whole bunch of different steps. With WildSpotter, there's currently no revisit form in the app either. With EDDMapS Pro, you have the option to download the records for offline use. So you're getting a static version of a data set to interact with. EDDMapS app and the WildSpotter app do not have that. The EDDMapS app, you can see a live version of the map of points, but you can't, you have to have signal for that. There's no downloading of that data for a local copy. Background maps, Kevin briefly mentioned these in his talk earlier. There are background maps downloadable for certain states and counties for offline use. So again, you're in an area with no signal. That means you're not going to have a Google map to put those points on. So we have certain states and counties downloaded. If you want your state, county, whatever, to have background maps and it's not currently available, you can send us an email and let us know. Background maps for the EDDMapS app are, again, just if you have mobile signal. With WildSpotter, there are maps that are based on the sites. So it's not a county map, it's a site map that you can download as background for those particular sites. The EDDMapS Pro app does not have a field guide. Again, this is for professionals. There's the expectation that there's going to be a certain level of expertise with regards to identification, but also because you can download maps and download data and all these different things, there had to be a certain amount of decision making for how to keep the app as small as possible so the most number of people could use it. So there is no field guide in EDDMapS Pro. There is a field guide in the EDDMapS app and for WildSpotter. And again, it's based off of the state, province, site that you have selected. So you need to select that before you have no signal if you're going to change where you're going. And then currently reporting into projects, I mentioned projects a few minutes ago. You can do that directly from EDDMapS Pro for the projects you are a member of. It's not currently an option in the EDDMapS app or WildSpotter, but if you are using the EDDMapS app or WildSpotter, you can reassign data to different projects on the website, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So this is kind of a snapshot of the decisions you kind of need to think about when you're saying what app you're going to use or what app you're going to recommend the people you work with, either volunteers or employees or coworkers or whatever, should use. So in trying to figure out, you know, how to not be on the computer constantly, the best way is to get information to come to you, in my opinion. So that's where these alerts come in. Chuck mentioned him in his talk at the beginning of this. So you click on My EDDMapS, you click on Alerts, and this is how you set up alerts. You pick your geographic area and what type of invasive you're looking for. So division would be plant, insect, wildlife, disease. Those are your options. Or if you want to get more specific, you can go into category, which is if you're only interested in aquatic plants, you would select you know, your geographic area and then go down to category and select aquatic plants. Or if you have a particular species or a certain species list in mind, we do have people who create alerts for specific species if they have a very narrow focus. Say, all I care about is spotted lanternfly. So I want to know where spotted lanternfly is, but I also want to know where tree of heaven is, because tree of heaven is an important host for spotted lanternfly. So I might make an alert for those two species. So as you create your alerts, you'll then get emails when those parameters are met. You're not going to get an email every day. You'll just get an email when those parameters are met with the list of records that came in. And these are verified records. These are records that have been reviewed by the EDDMapS verification network or came in through an expert source, because we do have data that comes in, you know, if it's literature data that was published, things like that, that data will come in already reviewed. So this is the type of email you can expect to get. Talked about maps earlier. Some of the previous presentations went into them pretty thoroughly. So this is the current list of options for a large number, not all of the species, but a large number, especially of plants. These three types of maps are fairly new. We've had the future range and future certainty for a while, and I do know people have used them. The future abundance was talked about very in depth earlier. But these three types of maps are going to help you to figure out where species will likely be based on, you know, habitats, but, you know, where they'll also be potentially in the future. So future certainty helps you identify where something will potentially be. Same with future habitat. And then future range, you can use that to compare against current data and future data. Location maps were talked about earlier. Chuck went into them, so I'm just going to cover them again in case they were missed, as well as I'm going to talk about a couple other things related to them. So if you go to the tools page and you click on species status report by other geographic locations. So this isn't your state, this isn't your county, these are other types of geographic locations. And that's the best way we could put it, because it's just such a wide range what could be in there. So if you click on that, you'll then fill out your country and at least your state or province. The more you fill out, the more you don't have to scroll through as much. So if you can fill out a county or jurisdiction or whatever equivalent exists for county equivalent, that'll give you a list of options that will be more local to the area you're interested in. So you will notice that there's like Rocky Mountain Forest Reserve on here a few times. You'll see that. You'll also see some other ones that might not be easily decipherable, because this is based on the data that was provided to us. But in some cases, there are going to be where a location or a property or an area was split into multiple entries, and that's just how it was provided to us. So you might have to do a little bit of trial and error if, say, you're interested in Rocky Mountain Forest Reserve or something similar. You would click on the link that you're interested in, and in this case, this is one of the Rocky Mountain Forest Reserves, and you'll see that it outlines the area. In this case, it's a kind of a long, skinny one. You can set your buffer distance if you want to include what could be nearby. The eradication status, so positive, I saw it, treated, I saw it and treated it, performed some sort of control measure. Eradicated, it's no longer there, hopefully. And negative, we looked for and did not find it. Those are also in the legend at the bottom left of the map, so that you know what point represents what. And then in the bottom, there's a list of a table of the list of species that are reflective of your choices. So there's no buffer distance. All of the records that are in this particular geographic area are showing up. So that's what's showing up on the map. And then if I wanted to change something, so in this case, I got rid of eradicated and negative. So theoretically, these are just the records that are there that you would expect to be able to find based on the last known status of that population. And you'll notice that the count has changed comparing oxeye daisy from the left to the right, because we got rid of, maybe there was negative or eradicated populations of oxeye daisy. And then when you go to download this, it'll be whatever is that current table. So, you know, if you downloaded it on the right, you'd have 206 count for oxeye daisy compared to the 212 on the left. So you can use these types of maps and queries to help you identify the species in your area of responsibility, especially if you're not a county or similarly easy kind of area. Another way to view these types of maps, so in this case, I'm looking at an individual record of Kogon grass. And in the bottom left, this has always existed, not always, but in the last few years, this information has been available. These are now live links. So if you click on, say, Six Rivers SYSMA, it will take you to the map of Six Rivers SYSMA. So you can see all of the points that fall within, in this case, Six Rivers SYSMA. I should have picked something with fewer S's. And again, you will see the list of species that are present in this particular geographic area. So we do have the SYSMA boundaries for Florida. And so you can play around with that, the other geographic areas to figure out if the one you're responsible for or one you work in a lot is present in there. I mentioned the advanced query tool earlier. We did add this advanced query tools walkthrough right above the reporter section. So that can give you some additional information about what each individual field means and what you can expect out of it. So I did want to talk about this because that this other geographic locations, it's the same thing as here. So in this case, I picked City of Kawartha Lakes, which is in Kawartha Lakes, Ontario. And so this is the result from that. So these, you know, there's around 2,000 records in this, but because I created this as a query, and I can add, maybe I just care about plants, maybe I just care about certain date ranges, or maybe I don't care about the negative records. You can add all of those query parameters into the advanced query tool. And like Chuck mentioned earlier, you can save this query. And when you save it, you can rerun it, or you can use it in EDDMapS Pro. So if I go to my EDDMapS and then my saved queries, it shows up here, and you can click on any of these and run and see the current results for that query. It's like a saved recipe, and you're just making it over and over again. And you can create a new data set. So if, oh, this isn't quite what I'm looking for today, you can go back to the advanced query tools and create a new saved query. And then any of these are available in your EDDMapS Pro to download and interact with in EDDMapS Pro. The My Species list is another one I mentioned earlier. So this is where you create your own species list. So my EDDMapS, My Species list, and you can add from an existing species list if that one exists for your state. You can also add individual species one by one. You can remove species, clear your whole list, start over. But this species list that you create will be in the My List of the EDDMapS app, which is on the left. So that's My List. And then on the right, when you go to add a subject to your record, when you're creating a new record in EDDMapS Pro, it'll show up as as the options. The options for reportable species in EDDMapS Pro are your My List, and any projects that you're part of, it will also automatically add their list as well. The EDDMapS Pro tool, so this is you know, I'm getting into some of the stuff that Kevin talked about earlier. So the EDDMapS Pro tools are kind of gathered there under the collapsible there. And so we'll just go through those quickly. So my counties, these are the counties that you would say you're responsible for or you're working in. You select your counties because that allows you to download any maps that may exist and also to download the entire county's data set. So you can download in EDDMapS Pro your saved query data set or county level data set. So those are the two types of data sets you can download. Photo projects was another thing, again, Kevin mentioned. So this is what it looks like on the website when you go under EDDMapS Pro tools, and then you click on photo projects. You'll see any photo projects you've already created. You can create new photo projects. You can download the images. If you're adding a new photo project, this is what it looks like. The photo projects aren't specifically tied to any particular record. It's a way to get the big picture. So if you're looking at a field that you're responsible for, it might have 20 different invasive species in it, and maybe biocontrol agents and other things going on. This is how you get the big picture of what it looks like over time and the changes that happen over time. And you can share the photo projects with other people as well. We've gone back and forth about what this is called. Right now, it's currently called project areas. It's been called MyKMLs. Because project has been used so many different ways and different times for different things, we're going to probably call this either My Boundaries or Boundary Areas. You can upload a KML file. You can draw the boundary area. You can share it with other people. What this looks like is this. So in EDDMapS Pro, when you turn on your project area or your boundary or whatever you want to call it, it's a way of seeing an area. There's no current way to use these to do any sort of data selection. This is just a visual representation of an area that maybe you are working in, maybe you need to avoid going in it. However, you need to use these areas. And again, you can share these so other people can access them too, to be able to use them. So when people talk with me about EDDMapS Pro, it can seem kind of daunting to say, oh, these are all the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success. So, but once you kind of set yourself up the one time, it's really just little updates and checks here and there. So with any of these things that you're participating in or features you're utilizing, all you have to do is kind of go through and say, okay, I'm going out for the day. I want to make sure that my county data set is refreshed. My saved query is refreshed, because those are, again, static versions of things. However, a lot of these other things may not change on a day-to-day basis. You may not be changing your project areas or boundaries. You may not be changing where you're working, so you don't need to update and make sure you have, today's version of aerial maps or road maps. And some of these things should update automatically, but you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of different lists. One thing I didn't put directly on here is that your upload queue, you always want to make sure your upload queue is any data you took previously that should be uploaded should go into the database. That way it gets reviewed and potentially becomes publicly available. You don't want data to sit on your phone for days, weeks, months, whatever. Something that I don't think has been mentioned yet, but we do have help menus on many of the pages, screens of EDDMapS Pro. So it's that little question mark at the top. There's a couple different ways this can look once you tap on it. It can look like almost like a PDF page that comes up, but it tells you everything you should expect to see on that screen and what that screen means. Or in the case of the invasives map, which is kind of the home page of EDDMapS Pro, if you tap on that help icon, you'll see in this case what all of the possible icons mean for representing essentially data on that screen. So the Pro help menus, I think we might have talked about it at the last summit, but I'm not 100% certain. So I wanted to make sure that you knew what that question mark meant. It's a way to help guide you through the app. Going back to the website, Chuck mentioned earlier bulk revisits. So bulk revisits is a feature in Pro Tools in the My EDDMapS section. So what you would do is if you're just hand spraying things or, taking care of just a few things at a location, it really makes a lot of sense to revisit those things while you're still out there. But if you're doing aerial applications, if you're, running a roadside sprayer and you're just spraying just all day, or you have a huge volunteer effort to go out and pull all the plants, the invasive plants in an area where it's heavily infested. This is where bulk revisits is really helpful. So you would zoom into the area that you worked in, we'll say. You would click, there's a little magnifying glass icon in the top. You would click that, and what that would do is it would add all the points to the map. You would then draw a polygon around the area that you worked in. So I already did that. That's a red polygon. The other option is you can upload a KML so that you can put the polygon in there without having to draw it. When you do that, it changes the table that appears below that map to show that the records that are in that particular area, in that particular polygon that you uploaded or drew. You can then select the records that you are saying you revisited, and you would fill out this revisit form. It's automatically going to assign the revisit record to you as the logged in account. It's automatically going to put in the subject as the subject of the original record. It already knows the location. You can't change that. So all you're going to do is, are these all positive because you're there and you didn't work? Are they all treated because, you did management efforts? You can add your observation date if that's a different day than the current date, and add any additional comments. It's a very simple form. There's not a lot of options, and most of it's already filled out for you. So we worked with our partners on how to make that situation where it's my job to go out and treat invasive species, and I'm going to do it all day, and I'm not going to be able to every 5 minutes, okay, this is the one I'm revisiting now. Okay, this is the one I'm revisiting now. To make it as easy as possible. So again, you don't have to spend all that time on your phone or on your computer. And finally, I want to talk about projects. So again, projects are a way, I've shown you the advanced query tool. I've shown you the location maps. There's a lot of different ways of looking at data, of getting an idea of the data in an area or at a time or belonging to certain people. But projects are a way to unite data that would be difficult otherwise. Now, to get to projects, you go to My EDDMapS, and then there's projects, and you would select the type of project that you're part of. So in this case, I'm showing you what the example project is. I am an admin of the example project, so I have a lot of options here on the left. If I'm just a user or a participant in the project, I would only have the dashboard, my records, contact admins, and leave project as my options. But as a project admin, I have a lot more options for managing records and so forth. To get records into projects, you have two options. You can use EDDMapS Pro and directly report into the project. That option is on the record form. It's right at the top. or you can move records into a project later if you're not using EDDMapS Pro, or if you have data from a while ago you want to put in there. Projects, the walkthrough on projects, we have a lot of information relating to projects available on the tools and training, on the training page. So you can go to there and you'll see there's a projects walkthrough, and there's a projects presentation from the last summit, and there was a office hours on projects last year as well. But I want to show you what moving data into projects looks like. So you'll have to be in the project it's already in. So if you've previously reported into, using the EDDMapS Pro app or the website or whatever, that's where the data is assigned to. So in this case, I have 7 entries in the example project. So I can go to my records, which is what I'm looking at currently, and I can select the records that I want to move. So in this case, a record of lightning and a record of boundary point. And then you'll see in the top right that there's a little 2 next to the move records button. So I've selected my records. I'm going to select move records. I'm going to say what project that I'm also in that I want to move those records to. So in this case, I'm saying the demo project. But there's a problem because the demo project isn't accepting boundary point as a subject in the project. So it has to match. So in this case, I could move all my lightning records over to the demo project if I wanted to, but it would not accept any of my boundary point records. So that is a limitation you have to be aware of. And we mentioned this all throughout there, but you'll see that blue message at the bottom that project admins can see information that would not normally be public. So project admins will be able to see private coordinates, they'll be able to see anonymous names and so forth. When you put data in a project, that is one of the reasons people wanted a project, was to be able to see information that wouldn't normally be public. So everywhere we could, we put that notification that, your data in a project is not the same level of private that it would be to the public. So that's kind of the end of my frequently asked questions and tips and tricks kind of section. Looks like we have plenty of time for questions either about this particular presentation, or if you have questions about any previous presentations. I think most, if not all, of our previous presenters are here. And also, this is my email address here, and I think some of the other presenters have shown their email addresses as well for additional questions.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. It looks like we have one question sitting in the Q&A right now. If submitting EDDMapS data to your state, can you still revisit bulk data to make changes before they take the data into their system?
If submitting, so I'm not entirely certain the logistics of this.
You have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's going to, I mean, I guess it would, depending on the timing and probably what state you're in and how often they pull the data from EDDMapS into their state database, if they're maintaining a separate database from EDDMapS. A lot of the states that we are partnering with now are just using EDDMapS as their database. They may pull a copy as to use in their internal systems, but EDDMapS is kind of the database of record for most of the states, especially the states that are requiring data go into EDDMapS. So I think the answer is yes, that it would be a timing issue, if anything, if they pull the data, today and then tomorrow you do the bulk revisit, then it wouldn't be they pulled it. But I think everybody that's pulling data like that is pulling it on a regular basis. So they would eventually at least get updated in the system that way.
Yeah, and when data is downloaded, and I think I showed that on the advanced query tool page, but you can say, what type of data you want to download. If you want to download original and revisits, or just revisits, or just original records. So we do have that option if they're pulling data out that way as well.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Last call, throw them in the Q&A if you've got any questions, or if you've got any 2 cents you want to throw to the group. If not, please take a moment to fill out our survey here. So I know Chuck posted it in the chat. Let me post it again so it's right top for everyone. You can use the QR code as well, but that feedback is really helpful for designing this summit to be as effective as possible. I also want to just take a moment to shout out our sponsors one more time. So this would not have been possible without the Washington Invasive Species Council, the Montana Department of Agriculture, Invasive Species Center, Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, Utah Weed Supervisors Association, Colorado Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council, and the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. And Chuck, thanks to you and your crew for putting on a great program here. All right, we do have one more question. How would you enter a species if you found dead specimens and no live ones, such as spotted lanternfly? I would like to track the data, but also no live or larvae were found.
So on our reporting forms for, I don't know if it's for insects, but I know for wildlife, we do have life status as an option. So you can say alive, dead, unknown. I don't know if insects we have that option. I know we have life stage as an option, but you can always put in the comments section that, you know, all of the organisms you observed of the species of record were dead at the time. So that is an option as well. And we do have people who are interested in that.
Right. Would you recommend EDDMapS or EDDMapS Pro for conservation for crews?
It really, again, depends on what that crew needs. If you're talking about summer interns who are only going to be there for like 3 months and are not experienced in identification and are not going to be doing revisits, then the EDDMapS app would be an appropriate one to for them to use, because it has the field guide in it. It doesn't have the revisit form. If you're talking about people who are employees and they're going to be doing this the whole growing season and they're doing revisits and treating and going back to different areas, that's where EDDMapS Pro becomes more useful, because again, you can download the existing data to do the revisits. You can, you know, have those boundary areas so that you can say, okay, this is the crew working in this area, this is the crew working in that area, and you can assign them to, you know, to use those particular project areas or boundary areas. You can do a lot more with Pro, but not everybody needs all those features. And so, like Chuck mentioned earlier, the reason we have WildSpotter and EDDMapS Pro is that it's for the intended audience. We make it so that the intended audience has what they exactly need as much as possible, and not any of the extra stuff they don't need.
Yeah, the field guide is for, I mean, if you don't need the field guide, but you know, at the same time, you can easily put both apps on your phone and have the field guide in the EDDMapS app. And then if you're collecting, you know, where I usually draw the line is if you're collecting a lot of data, you know, 100 points or 50 points or more a day, is probably going to be faster to collect that data in EDDMapS Pro than it is in the EDDMapS app. And especially if you're doing polygons and you want to be able to use the new walk the polygon feature, then that's another thing that is only available in EDDMapS Pro at this point. So well, thanks to all the speakers as well that came in and shared their perspective on what they're doing with EDDMapS. We want to, all of these presentations will be available on the EDDMapS website and on through NASMA as well. So please feel free to go back and refer to them and respond to the survey, because it'll help us determine how we do this in future years. And there's no more questions, then let's all go home for the day if you're on the East Coast anyway.
Thanks, Chuck, and thanks to all of our speakers and everyone who helped to make today happen. And as everybody's mentioned, please check out NASMA's website and other upcoming events. Thanks so much and take care.
Thanks, everybody.